Hello, this is Ruth Ann. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I've done a couple of these videos, but it's been a while. I'm going to do a scent story. And I'm just picking one particular fragrance that I recently had a very interesting experience with. And I want to tell you the story of it. So I'm just going to start out with a little bit of background. And I'm going to try not to be too long-winded because I know you want to get on with your lives, right? But I'm going to try to make this as interesting and as honest as I can. So imagine, if you will, with me, a world going back in time. I know a lot of you are a lot younger than me. I'm in my mid-50s, and I was a child in the 1970s, and then I was a teenager in the 80s. Now, this was probably peak time for perfumery, at least in recent modern era times, because perfume was strong, it was not very expensive, it was long lasting, and it was also extremely everywhere. It was everywhere. Every woman, every child I knew, all of us kids, when I was a little girl, we would play our little games, and sometimes we'd sit around in a circle and we'd talk about what perfumes we liked and what perfumes we wore. And the idea that someone wouldn't wear perfume or someone didn't like perfume was unheard of for us. It would be ridiculous because that's just part of life, right? My dad wore his aftershaves and colognes every day. My mother wore her perfume every day. You walked into your friends' houses in the neighborhood and they all smelled like cigarette smoke and perfume. And that's the other thing. Imagine, if you will, a world where 80 to 90% of all the adults smoke, and they don't just smoke politely like smokers do now where they go outside, but this is everyone smoking inside, everyone smoking in the car. And my dad would not even really roll down the window. He'd crack it a little bit when he would smoke. And so your whole world around you and everywhere you go, and all the stores and all the restaurants, is smoking. Smoking's allowed. In the malls, there were ashtrays everywhere in the hallway, and there was, in the little seating areas in the mall hallways. Generally, you were to smoke, people smoked in the hallways, but not in the individual stores. There was like a rule about that. But the bathrooms all had smoking. People, they had seats in the entryways where people would sit and smoke. In the airports were smoking. In the airplanes, people smoked. I remember going to restaurants with my parents, and there would be a line of people, a group of people waiting for the smoking section. And then there'd be this tiny little non-smoking section with maybe 5 or 6 booths, and they'd be empty. And they'd say, well, if you want to be seated right away, you have to sit in non-smoking. And those would be empty, and there'd be all these people waiting for the smoking sections, because that's how avid smokers were in America. I grew up in a city in the Midwest. I did not grow up in a small town. I grew up in a big city, very metropolitan area. So the whole world is surrounded with scent. So, and scent, I still believe that part of the reason why women's fragrance and fragrance in general was so strong back then was to try to cover up the scent of cigarette smoke, because otherwise that's all you would smell. Everyone would just smell like cigarette smoke. Now, I don't really like the smell of cigarette smoke. I was used to it back then. I never questioned it. I grew up, I'd sit on my dad's lap and he'd be chain smoking. I mean, no one thought anything of that. We'd be sitting down at supper and he'd be smoking. Okay, it was just everywhere. That's what all of my friends' houses were like. Okay, this was not at all unusual. Every single parent that I knew of all my friends in my neighborhood, the parents smoked. So anyway, imagine, if you will, you're living in a world where scent is everywhere and you don't think anything of it, and you don't give anyone a hard time about it. Like it's a live and let live. Lorraine across the street wears Charlie and she smokes Winston's and she smells like Winston's and Charlie. And Ralph, your next door neighbor, your friend's dad, he smokes Marlboros and he smells like Old Spice. Marlboro and Old Spice. And you walk in the door and that's what the place smells like. You go to the store and every single lady you pass in the hallway smells like a perfume shop and cigarettes. And it pervades your whole world. And you may not like it. You may feel there are all kinds of fragrances you don't really care for, but you don't complain about it because that's rude, right? That's rude. Your Aunt Judy smells like a fern bush, right? Because of that green, that harsh green fragrances that were so popular back in the 70s. I swear women wanted to smell like a Christmas tree on steroids, and you may not have loved it, but you didn't complain about it. That's just what your aunt smelled like. It was live and let live. You picked out the perfumes you liked, you wore those, and you just lived with everyone else around you, and you didn't complain because that's the way it is. It's just like if someone's wearing clothing you don't like, you don't complain to them. You don't say, hey man, you look terrible. Those jeans don't look good on you. Those shoes look terrible. That hair, what were you thinking? You need to find a hairdresser that knows what they're doing. No, you would never dream of doing that. And nor would we have ever done that about scent back then. Okay? So fast forward to now. And now hardly anyone smokes. I think that's a good thing because health-wise, I'm not a smoker either. But now we really don't have scents around us. Right? You go to the mall, if you go to stores, you go to the grocery store, you don't smell smoke anymore because no one's smoking. Smoking's not allowed. And even the smokers that I know, they all smoke outside and they very carefully don't smell like smoke. Like one of my best friends is a pack-a-day smoker, and I swear she never smells like smoke unless she's just come in from smoking. So we've sanitized our environments to the point that we think that now we all have a right. We have a right to be in a scent-free society. We shouldn't have to smell smoke. We shouldn't have to smell perfume. We shouldn't have to smell air fresheners. We shouldn't have. And that blows my mind that you actually think that you can go out into public and that you have a right to a scent-free atmosphere. But yet at the same time, their perfumes sell like crazy and people are wearing scents, but they're not as strong as they used to be. They're a lot weaker. There's not as big of a scent bubble. I mean, to be honest with you, I love fragrance and I walk around the grocery store and I very rarely smell perfume or anything other than what the produce and the things in the grocery store. So I think that that's part of the reason why we have this strong group of Karens. We have a lot of Karening going on around fragrance, and it's really starting to tick me off. And I don't wear any truly out there niche fragrances that smell disgusting. I'm pretty much all wearing mainstream, inexpensive kind of fragrances that are generally well accepted by the public. So I have a story to tell you about this. This story is leading up to a specific fragrance that I wore recently, and I'm going to show it to you now that you don't have to look at my bare desk anymore. So this is Ard Al Zafaraan's Dirham Wardi. Now this is a infamous fragrance. It's very popular. It's well known on YouTube. I've myself have seen probably 10, 20 videos where people are either talking solely about this fragrance or are mentioning it. This has been compared to Carolina Herrera Good Girl, Miss Dior Cherie, and Delina. Delina, it's been actually called a dupe of Delina. I don't own any of those other fragrances. I don't know what they smell like. I bought this because it was a reasonably priced, well-reviewed fragrance, and it's beautiful. And so I'm going to just briefly let you know what's in here. The top notes have rose, orange blossom, pear, black currant. In the mid, we have praline, iris, jasmine. Base notes are patchouli, vanilla, and tonka. Sounds very mainstream, very feminine. This is one of the most popular fragrances on the face of the earth right now. This is Ard Al Zafaraan's most popular female fragrance that they sell. That's how mainstream this is. That's how widespread the use of this fragrance is. I have worn this now for several months. Not every day, but on the regular. It was on my perfume rotation over the summer. I wore it quite a bit, enjoyed it. I don't find anything the least bit offensive about it. I've never had anyone, my husband compliments me on it. It's just one of those that you can't imagine anyone disliking. It lasts 8+ hours. I would describe it as juicy berries. It's a very feminine, girly pink, just like the bottle. It's the main notes are rose and pear, and then the dry down is just this creamy, cozy, elegant fragrance. It's signature scent worthy. It's beautiful, long lasting and beautiful. That, and it doesn't cost a fortune. All right, let me tell you what happened. I had sprayed this several days ago in the morning and then reapplied in the afternoon. I had maybe 4 sprays on, not oversprayed, because this one is not super strong. In fact, I wasn't even really aware of it at the time. So it was after supper, so it had been several hours since I had applied it. My husband and I live in a large apartment building. We had gone out the front door to take out the garbage together, and we came back in the front door. And when I walked in the door, a breeze came in after me, and there was a woman, probably in her 30s, full-blown Karen. We're talking major Karen mode. She is standing about 10 feet away from me by the P.O. boxes, our mailboxes, and she's checking her mail, and she turns immediately to me as I walk in, and she stares me in my eyes, and she covers her face, her mouth and nose, with both her hands, like she has just smelled the most disgusting thing she has ever smelled in her life. She stared at me as if I had just insulted her. And I don't know who she is. I don't think she lives here. I think she's the daughter of one of the people who lives here, because she was there with an older woman, I believe, was there checking her mail. Anyway, then I'm like, well, I don't say anything to her. She doesn't say anything to me. But she's very obviously telling me with her nonverbals exactly what she thinks of how I smell. So I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm shocked. And I walk over beside her like I'm ignoring her, completely ignoring her. I go over to check my mail, because that's what I do in the evening. And then when I'm standing about 3 feet away from her, she starts coughing, still holding her mouth and her nose, coughing. And then she says, perfume, perfume, oh, perfume. And then, and I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not lying, you guys, she starts gagging. She's literally gagging. Now, it's the kind of gag. Now, I'm a nurse practitioner. I've been in medicine for many years. I know when someone's exaggerating, and I know when someone's faking. This is fake gagging. And she's carrying. This is the most severe carrying I have ever experienced in my life. She's carrying on as if I'm coming after her with a knife. Like I'm personally trying to offend her. I'm about to hit her. I've done something horrible to her. And she's just, oh, the perfume. Oh. And she's gagging and carrying on. And I just stand there. I get my mail. I shut my mailbox. And I'm standing there looking at her. And I'm trying to think of something to say. And all kinds of things go through my mind that I would never say. Swear words, calling her names. I could have started insulting her. Of course, I won't do that, right? Because I'm not rude. And I'm not a Karen. And I would never dream of doing that to somebody, even if they're doing it to me. So I just stand there and stare at her, and I thought, well, I'm just going to let my silence speak, and I'm just going to look at her shocked, like with my eyes, and tell her how incredibly rude she is. And then my husband's talking to someone else. My husband is a scientist, and he's absolutely clueless. He's one of these guys, I love him to death. He's the smartest man I've ever known. But when it comes to things like this, like inner women things, he's absolutely clueless. Like I could have been stripping down naked there and he wouldn't have noticed. He would have been talking to this guy he was talking to. And then he would have said, oh, When did you take your clothes off? Like a half hour later. So that's my husband. His mind is on other things, so he doesn't notice what's going on. And finally, when he's done having his conversation, he walks up to me because, of course, he doesn't realize what's going on. And then I just walk away with him, and we get on the elevator and go up to our apartment. And I leave this lady gagging and carrying on like a Karen. And I'm like, okay, I could kind of understand if I were wearing something like this. Okay, this is a very deep, dark, this is Maison Alhambra Philos Opus Noir. This is a very dark, complex, incensey. I could see someone who had allergies or sensitivities being upset with this. I could see if I was wearing something like Cacharel Lulu. This is a nuclear floral. I could see people reacting to this. But to Dirham, Wardi, no way. That is a major, major Karening. And I still can't believe it. This happened to me about 4 days ago. And I'm kind of somewhere between being insulted, being angry. But in the end, it got me thinking about this thing about so many people having problems with scent. And it's kind of like the theory behind why so many people now have anaphylactic peanut allergies is because people started to freak out about peanuts and nuts, and then they wouldn't give them to their children. Whereas I grew up, we ate everything. There was no introduction slowly to different foods, so we weren't allergic to anything. And so now we're not exposing children to these things. So and when they are exposed to them later, they've developed allergies. So now we have these clean, sanitized, scent-free, perfume-free world, and then now everyone thinks, or not everyone, but a large number of these Karens are so entitled that they think that they deserve to have a scent-free environment. And how dare anyone wear a perfume that I can actually smell? Well, I don't buy it. And I say, let's wear our perfumes. Let's do it. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm not trying to trigger allergies, trigger asthma. But if you are in public place and you're not in your own home, you do not have a right to a scent-free environment. You don't. And if you're upset, wear a mask. Get an N95. Get an air freshener and hang it around your neck. Get a dehumidifier, like a personal dehumidifier. I'm sure they make them for you Karens out there that don't like fragrance. Go and find something like that. And if you're going to insult people on their mild fragrances, then you should better start insulting everybody about the clothes that they're wearing that insult you, and about their hairstyles that are way out of date and are inappropriate for whatever reason because you don't like it. All right. Anyway, I've ranted and raved, but I tell you, that really ticked me off. So that is my scent story about Dirham Wardi. I'm sorry that this has gone on so long, and thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.